Mike, would you lead us in a pledge?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 2 is roll call. Mr. Moran is here. Mr. Rathel. Here. Mr. Van Oz. Mr. Mans. Here. Mr. Stoll. Here. Mr. Folbaum. Here. Item number 3 is any additions or deletions to the agenda. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as submitted. So moved. Motion by Mr. Mans. Support by Mr. Folbaum. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Motion carries. Item number 4 is a presentation by Kelly from CNS Engineers on runway 422, the design and the rehab project update. Kelly?
Good evening. How's everybody doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. So I think hopefully everybody knows me. I'm Kelly Yost. I'm with CNS Engineers. I'm the project manager for this project. Mike and I have been working on this for a while now, and working with the FAA, working with MDOT, trying to get it going kind of on a quick schedule. So just going to do an overview here. Feel free to ask questions as I go. A little background. I'm sure most people are aware of this information, but I'll just go through it quickly to make sure that everybody's aware of where this all came from. We started out with some pavement failures on runway 1735 and taxiway A. We had a lot of repairs. Some of this happened before CNS came on board. There were some repairs made, and some of those didn't work. When we did come on board, some of those failures were happening, and we're trying to figure out how to fix them. Do we keep doing the repairs? We decided, in conjunction with MDOT, that the best way to handle it would be to do a pavement study. They funded that project, and there were 2 phases of that. Basically determined that you had a chemical reaction in the concrete, which is a similar problem to what Detroit Metro's having. I'm sure you've seen the articles in the newspaper. They've got a $100 million project over there for the same reason, basically. So we found that was true with 1735 and taxiway A. And then at the same time that we were doing those, the pavement study, we found 422 started having the same issues. So with 422 being your main runway, basically decided that needed to be the priority. And funding suddenly became available in 2014. This was discretionary funding from the FAA, and it was kind of with the contingency that we can basically design it and get it bid within fiscal year 2015. So you'll see when I go through the schedule, it's a little bit quick. It's a quick schedule, and that's really the reason, because we had to get it in fiscal year 2015, and their fiscal year ends September 30th. So these are the project limits. We're basically reconstructing the full runway 422, and that includes taxiway J down to the south end and just little portions and tie-ins on the other taxiways. As far as the project scope, full reconstruction, when I say that, it means basically we're taking out everything, all that old military pavement. That was what they recommended when they did the pavement study. We need to get all of that out of there. And it's going to be actually reconstructed in asphalt instead of concrete. And then we're also going to narrow that runway from 100 feet to 75 feet, and that's to meet the most recent FAA standards for your type of airport. We're going to remove those existing paved shoulders, all the old pavement that's on the east side. There's 50 feet of that old shoulder where it used to be real wide. We've narrowed it, and we're going to narrow it again. We're going to get rid of all that pavement. Got some runway safety area improvements. Again, to meet FAA standards, it's got to be graded to a certain percentage, and we're going to make sure that those are all upgraded during this project. We're going to do all new lighting, LED. That includes also relocation of the signs, and nav aids would be the PAPIs and I don't know how much you guys are familiar with the acronyms about precision approach path indicators and the runway end lights. Those are going to be also relocated unless there's some reason during construction we find that they have to be upgraded to new. But as of right now, we're planning to relocate most of those. The only one that is going to be new is the runway 22 PAPI. And then there is going to be a crowned pavement section. Right now, that runway slopes from west to east, and it's pretty difficult to get that thing drained. We've been having some water problems out there. We're going to crown it in the middle, lift it up a little bit so it's going to be raised, and you should have a lot better pavement section out there.
And Kelly, just to add to a few things too, the reason we're removing the existing shoulders is they're asphalt paved shoulders that are starting to deteriorate quickly. We don't generally want to leave those in the ground because they can create FOD for us. Debris will blow onto the runway and planes can start sucking that into their induction system. So it is a good idea to remove those shoulders while we're doing this project rather than have to do it in the future. The reason for the 100 feet down to 75, basically the FAA will look at the fastest, largest plane we have here, and it's kind of like our category aircraft. And they run all their calculations on the planes we have coming in and what records we can prove, and basically we fall into the category where it's a little narrower. So that steps it down to 75 feet. Also, that is a large cost savings for us. If we were to keep the 100 feet, I don't know if this project would be in our ballpark as far as the budget we could afford. So it is a good cost savings. Unfortunately, it's tough to lose the 25 feet, but it's not really optional unless we want to pay for it out of pocket.
And another reason for that, I think, is just the FAA is being a lot more strict these days about what can be done and what's eligible, and they've made a lot of changes to the rules. And in the past, you guys have been allowed to put in shoulders, and it's really not part of their standard design. So now that they're being tighter on the budget, they're watching those things a lot more closely, and they basically have said that it's not required, so we're not going to pay for it. So they would not. We tried to find out if they could put shoulders back in, but they would not pay for that.
I think the only other note I had on that, the reason for asphalt, and Kelly, you can maybe back me up on this. When we did a cost comparison in concrete, and the estimates, I believe, were almost double for the materials.
Yeah, we did a life cycle cost analysis, and came out that asphalt was the cheaper route to go.
Kelly, can you expand a little bit on the safety?
Yep. They're pretty minor. You guys had a lot of those improvements done back with your old project. That was mostly at the ends of the runways. So your safety areas, as far as the ends are concerned, are pretty good.
Okay.
It's really on the sides of the runway,
Okay.
Where it has to meet a certain slope, a grade away from the runway. So that's really where the improvements are going to take place. Yep.
What's the largest plane that can land on 75 feet with?
I don't know that offhand. I'd have to look it up. I'm not sure. You guys have the Lear 35
Yeah, we have
that comes
a Lear
in here.
35 is considered our critical aircraft, correct? So that's
Well,
about
that's not it's not technically your critical aircraft, but it was
Class.
taken into account when we did the pavement design. So the pavement can hold a plane like that, and a plane that's bigger than a B2. A B2 is how they categorize your airport, but that's more based on you have to have 500 operations of that particular airplane, and that's how they come up with that width. So it's not that you can't have larger airplanes coming in here. It's just that that's the standard for the typical airplane that's coming in here. So it's not going to cause people like the Lear 35 not to be able to come in. I think anything that's coming in here right now will still be able to come in. That won't be an issue.
Kelly, what about the weight?
Yep.
Their calculations.
Yeah, we did a
What's
whole.
the maximum landing weight?
I don't know that offhand either, but we did a whole study. We took all the aircraft that you had in that list, and I believe the Lear 35 was the biggest one. We took that into account when we did the pavement design, and FAA has a program that they use, and we have to input all the airplanes that have come in here, and we use that as the heaviest one, and so that's taken into account when you figure out the thickness of the asphalt and the underlying layers. Yep, so that is taken into account. So again, anything that's coming in here now is going to be able to.
But I
continue
think,
to
Kelly, what Al is alluding to and what we have to think about is, we have a number of operations currently with a specific high-end type of aircraft, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's all that we'll ever have.
Right.
And the question that I have is, are we limiting our ability to do other things with other types of aircraft because of the narrowing and then also the weight capability of the runway?
I don't believe so, because you're going to be more limited by your length. with the length that you have and the fact that you're not really planning any extensions or anything, that would be more.
So anything that would be able to land on that length, would the width and the weight would be not the limiting factor.
Right.
They would be able to.
Yeah.
Correct. That's taken into account in their tables as well. They kind of have, if an aircraft can land on under 5,000 feet, it can land on, most aircraft can land on a 75-foot width. So that's kind of, the tables are kind of escalated like that. Like if we go to a 6,000-foot runway, normally you'll see 100-foot wide or something like that. It's kind of a tiered.
Yeah, so I don't think you're really limiting yourselves by the width. I don't think that's gonna.
So a B-17 can land on the 75 width?
B-17? I don't know.
Well, it lands here a lot, doesn't it?
Does it? Yeah. I mean, I guess I'd have to look and let you know for sure, but I'm sure it should be fine. I don't know what. Do you know what category they are? Category aircraft?
I don't know off the top of my head what.
Badass bomber category.
I went for a ride on that thing once.
Well, go ahead, Al.
Yeah, the problem I think with the B-17 unit loading on
Yeah, how it spreads the
the
weight.
is a 70-year-old design, 5-year-old design. The modern day airplanes usually have bogey wheels, which are like 4 per main gear, which means the load distribution is totally different. B-17 has, so the unit loading on the B-17 is higher, even if the aircraft was lighter.
Yeah, basically we're talking about how the airplane spreads its weight across its wheels.
Yeah.
It may apply more pressure in one spot than others.
You know what the wingspan is on it?
103 feet. Yeah, I know that John's thinking the back of his head, the C-130.
Not the back of my head, Al. It was right in the front.
And that was 133,000 pounds. What are the limitations? Aircraft, if we design to a Lear, is it a Lear?
35, yep.
If we knew what the weight was, the landing weight that they used as the design criteria, we would know what our limitations are. That's worth knowing.
Yeah. And I can check on the B-17 too, just to make sure there's no issues with that. But it's really more about your typical aircraft, your critical aircraft that are coming in here on a normal daily basis. You're still going to be able to accommodate those larger aircraft too. They're not coming in here a lot, so I don't really see that being an issue. But if there's things that you want me to look into and just make sure, I can get back to you
I
on
would
that.
like to know the maximum unit loading on main gear on the Lear 35.
You want to know the heaviest aircraft that
What
can
this design that
come in?
you've come up with,
Right.
not just the Lear 35, because there's G4.
I think we actually have that on the ALP.
and
I would
that
just
should
have to
give us
look
a
on there.
range of what we've got. Because I
Exactly.
see some of these airports, if you're over 12,530
You
passengers, you gotta get people to come in.
That limits our potential market. Seriously.
Because this is a reliever airport for,
Yeah.
It's a reliever airport.
Kelly, if you could get that get that to Mike, and then Mike, if you could email that to us as soon as you get it.
Yep, I can do that.
I think it's something that Mike, your office needs to know, and then certainly the advisory folks need to know, just so that when any conversations in the future come of air shows or, people wanting to come in, that would be common knowledge, of what we're able to accommodate and not.
Yep. I know when we approved this last year, but we're still working through our airport layout plan, and I do believe those calculations are in there. I don't recall the
Yeah.
numbers off the top of my head, but we
Yep.
will get that to you guys.
There is a 2-page pro forma that describes all the typical aircraft on the high-end scale for runway length, which you already have, and weight.
Okay. Anything else on the project scope? Okay, phasing. This is what's going to be closed while the construction's actually happening. Obviously, runway 422 is going to be closed the entire time. We're also going to close down taxiway A and F will be east of taxiway C. Those will be closed. And then taxiways J and E will also be closed. We'll have a few temporary closures on taxiway A and taxiway C, and that's to do the home run electrical cable and conduit. That has to go from one side of the airport by the runway all the way over to the electrical vault. So those will be kind of short-term temporary closures. And then access as far as the construction traffic is going to be, we have 2 access points, one on Grow Road and then one on East River Road.
You can reference this also with the last page of the packet that was included. I'm sorry, last page of the information packet that was included in your commission packets. There's a diagram of the airport there that's outlines the area we're discussing.
Yep.
Does constitute a batch plant?
It's going to be asphalt, so I think probably not. It's going to be somebody that has an asphalt plant nearby.
Awful lot of truck traffic on that bridge.
It is, yep, it is. And that's why we talked about using both entrances. I think what we discussed is trying to keep traffic off of East River on the weekends if they were going to be doing any weekend or night work.
Yep.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Mike.
No,
but
the idea was, we have 2 accesses there. One from Grow Road near our maintenance shop or onto the airport, and the other access, as you can see in the drawing, is there is one gate that's onto a paved road directly onto the runway. And, through Kelly and I's discussions, my thought was we could use the East River entrance during the day, during the week, normal business hours. Weekends and nights that we'd be working, if we were working those, should be through the Grow Road access to keep the residents at peace. But there will be, with an asphalt runway this size, there is going to be a fair amount of truck traffic.
You factored into the bridge load limits?
yeah, we looked into that, and it doesn't seem to be an issue.
The comment I've always had from Wayne County whenever I've called about any bridge restrictions is as long as the truck is legal on the roads getting to the bridge will hold the weight.
Going to get a lot of flack for that.
From the residents? Is there anything we can do to kind of head that off?
I don't know. We could just have that access bridge, and we're talking thousands of trucks.
Going to be a lot of trucks. They're going to be bringing stone in too.
The majority of that will be during the day hours, though,
Yes.
correct?
Yep.
9 to
Yeah,
5.
you
or
probably
8
have
to
some
5,
some
Probably
earlier.
morning. Yeah.
You probably have some early morning, but then throughout the day, 9 to 5.
So an asphalt factory isn't a portable factory like you could set up a concrete.
Not typically. Usually it comes right from a plant that's a permanent structure. If it were concrete, then sometimes you would see the batch plant right on site.
Where that is?
Depends on the contractor. Depends on who gets the job.
Certain contractors will use certain batch plants if they give them a discount. And for a larger project, is that what decides the batch plant?
I don't know.
Okay.
It just depends. And we've talked to a few different contractors trying to figure out pricing for that reason. And it seems like there's enough in this area where it shouldn't increase your price really at all. That's the feedback we've gotten from them. So we have talked to a few different guys.
Well, even if we had concrete batch plant or an asphalt batch plant, still got to bring the product in. I'm not sure it would save us that much.
Yeah.
And the removal is going to be an issue because you've got to break up all that old concrete, and all that's leaving, right?
We don't know for sure yet. We're looking at whether we can use any of that or not. We definitely don't want to use the concrete that has been shown to have ASR. That's your first layer of concrete. The layer underneath, it's still up in the air as to whether we would be able to use that or not. AP Tech that did the concrete study originally, they have said that they believe we could use it. It would be more like a fill material, and it would be in the lower layers of the pavement section. It wouldn't be in the top 23 inches. And we're also trying to figure out if we could use it for fill even in the turf areas. So it's possible that we would break it up and some of it would go off-site and some of it would stay on. We're still trying to figure that out during final design.
So that would be the 5-inch overlay that's on that runway that's failing prematurely has to get removed no matter what. We're testing the underlying Navy layers to see if we can rubbleize in place and use on site. That's the only part that's still
Thick
up
is
for
that
debate.
layer, Mike?
Oh,
Oh, what is that layer?
8
I
inch.
can tell you if you give me 1 second.
It varies too in the landing zones. It's thicker. The reverse Oreo, so there's concrete, then asphalt, and then concrete back again underneath that because the Navy's done several different layers.
Yeah, it's like 3 different sections. 301. Not seeing it right away. But we're putting back 4 inches of asphalt, 6 inches of stone, and then 13 inches of what we call P154. So it's a thick section. And I can get you that information too. Oh, here it is. No, that's not it. I will get it for you. After I'm done here, I'll look for it. Okay. Anything else on phasing?
Well, my question, are we going to have to excavate a foundation? Are we going to have to take everything out and dig farther down?
Yeah, everything is coming out, and then is going to have to be filled back in, and then we're raising the runway by right around 2 feet.
So not only do we
Center
have
line.
asphalt concrete, but we'll have dirt underneath that we have to excavate as well.
There's some, yep. All right, the estimate, which is probably what most people are interested in. Total, this was at 60% completion, and we're actually getting ready to submit 90%, so this number could change. But as far as at 60% completion, we were at about 6.5 million, and that includes 5.3 for just the pavement, and then 1.1 for the lighting. Some of the changes from schematic design, because it did go up a little bit. We have some extended tie-in locations, and you can kind of see that on the project limits here. We originally went back to the hold lines, and after we looked into the record drawings a little further, we found that there was about 50 extra feet where we could go. If we went that 50 extra feet, we could get rid of all that old pavement, and we would match up with the limits from that Taxiway C project. So we figured that was a better way to go, so that you don't have a gap there of 50 feet with still that old pavement sitting in there. So those project limits got extended just a little bit.
So to clarify that too, I mean, if you guys recall, normally when we do a runway project, we pave up to the hold lines that are on the taxiways. The reason we do that is because in the future, if we go to do a taxiway reconstruction there, and that we don't reconstruct up to the hold lines, we have to shut the runway down while we're paving those because it's inside that safety area. So we normally will pave up to the hold lines. We have a weird case here where they paved the old pavement past the hold lines. So we don't want to have a weird pavement section in the middle with this old failing pavement in between the taxiway and the runway. We want to go get the whole concrete out full length, that extra 50 feet. So there was some cost increase to that.
They have to be ramped also, right? Because this runway is going to be higher than the.
They're going to have to be transitioned in, yeah. Not really. I mean, there's still criteria. They still have to meet certain criteria as far as how steep that grade can be. So it'll meet all those requirements. And that helps when you go back a little farther, so you can tie into it a little bit easier.
And a big reason for the elevation change too is on the south end right now. For example, we are having a water issue since wintertime of this year, where we've had some fresh water coming out of joints in the south end of that runway. So we believe we need to raise it up to address those issues, and then help with further drainage.
Yep. And actually, something that I should share with you, as we got into the final design, we added a section at that end where the water was coming out. The last 200 feet, we're going to be adding in a drainage layer that's going to be a little bit different than the rest of the runway, just for that, to take care of that problem and having the water come out of there. So that section at the very south end will be a little bit different than the rest of it.
Seven, 8, sometimes.
Yep.
And it's a lot of material.
It's a lot of material. Yeah.
Kelly, did you factor in, or is it factored in any place, replacement of surface roads leading to this project? Because with that many trucks, we're just literally going to tear Grow Road and part of Meridian up.
Yeah, there's not a cost in there right now for it. We say that the contractor has to put everything back the way it was. We can document it and take pictures, and if you think that's something we need to consider, I guess we can talk about that.
That qualify for FAA grant?
Guessing not.
Maybe they can come across the toll bridge, go down West River Road to Grow, and then replace that whole section there.
Try.
Nice try.
I don't know if that would fly.
Good thinking, John. I'm concerned. I mean, with this many trucks and structure of these roads,
Mostly out front, in front of the airport, or
front of here, and Meridian coming down, the main road coming down, which is already in pretty bad shape, there won't be much left of it after we bring several thousand trucks of concrete in here. Asphalt. I mean, it's going to be a mess.
Treasurer Van Oss, can you refresh my memory, are they going to do the chip sealing on that side of Grow Road as well? I'm just wondering what that does to chip sealing.
Yeah, it'll be gone.
Okay.
It'll be gone. That's all going to have to be replaced.
is that something they're doing?
Yes,
now?
we're going to do chip sealing this summer on Grow, East River, South Point.
I mean, we've already done the repairs there. And actually, at that intersection of Grow and East River, that's where the chip sealing is going to start going north. I mean, we are truly going to tear this thing up. Yeah, it'd be a heck of a test. That's right. If it outlives this, it'll outlive anything.
I finally found that section. They have 5 1/4 to 6 1/2 inches of concrete pavement on the top, 2 1/2 to 6 1/4 inches of asphalt underneath that, and then another layer of concrete, which is 8 inches thick. So it's quite an interesting pavement section, and that will all come out.
Kind of like I described before, like paint layers on a wall. If you keep painting and painting and painting, eventually we're going to have to strip it back to the plaster.
Oh my gosh,
Yep.
don't even
Just
joke around. Put your,
a lot of material.
turn your
We'll
mic
just
off.
dump all the concrete out there.
One of the other changes between schematic design and preliminary design is we added a new electrical home run cable and conduit all the way from the runway out to the electrical vault, because we originally thought that we would be able to reuse that, but it looks like after doing some site work and some investigation, there's not conduits where we thought there were, and that had to be added in. So that is an extra cost from change from the schematic to the preliminary. Your local match of this total is going to be 5%, and there's really a mix of funding here. A large portion of it's coming from the FAA discretionary funding, which is kind of hard to get. It's really a great thing that you guys are getting this money, because airports fight over this money every year, and they were looking for somebody to use it, and just worked out where you were able to have a project that was a high priority, and they gave it to you. So along with that, you have your entitlement funding, which I don't know how many people are aware, but you get the $150,000 every year. So that money will also go towards this project. And then you also are getting state apportionment funding, which is another separate pot of money that the state basically decides what they're going to do with that. The FAA gives it to them, but they kind of set up the program and decide which airports are going to get the money. So lots of different pots of money that are going to come together and do this project.
The $150,000 that we normally get is discretionary.
That's not
That's
considered entitlement.
entitlement
You get it
money,
every
yep.
year, so it's a little
Can
bit
we-
different.
Can we incorporate that into the township's indebtedness of 5%?
No, we've asked that question.
We tried.
We did try. We asked that question, I think, at the last MAP meeting that we had with them, and that was no.
By whining or anything like
I tried.
Did we bring cookies or something?
Cookies, crying.
Yeah, they didn't go for that.
okay.
I'll tell you, it's just on the funding portion here, and certainly this isn't a project that we went out looking for. But I've got to say that Kelly, you and your group and the relationships that you have with FAA and the state of Michigan, in my opinion, were a huge factor of us getting this money. It's just absolutely amazing that we were able to do it. They didn't feel any indebtedness to us for this project, and without it, we would not have been able to maintain these runways. The repairs, the maintenance costs of both these runways would have bankrupted this airport. And yeah, we don't want to have to come up with the 5%. We'll figure it out here at the airport. We're not going out for taxpayer dollars to do this. But I just want to thank you on this portion, because you and your team really worked well with the FAA especially. The FAA could have shut this down. I mean, that the state of Michigan, you know, we do well with, but the FAA really stepped up.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you for that recognition. All right, here's the schedule. This is, it's been a little crazy. Like I said, they said this money was available. They said you can take it if you can do it, if you can set the schedule and get it done in this amount of time. So well before contracts or anything, we kind of just got the ball rolling and said, you know, if we're going to get it done, we have to get people out there doing the geotechnical investigation, doing the survey. So they were out there in the wintertime getting that work done. So between December of last year and March of this year, that work was going on, and then we started schematic design. And then our first submittal for schematic design was in March. And I guess I should talk about the FAA and MDOT a little bit here, because we have all these review meetings set up with them, and we felt like it was very important for this project. There's some new requirements coming up where in the past the FAA didn't get very involved in plans and specs review, but now it's a new requirement. If you're spending a certain amount of money, if you're spending discretionary money, they have to get involved. They have a checklist. They're going to review the plans. They're going to review the specs. And we weren't sure what that meant for this project. We weren't sure how long it was going to take them, if it was going to delay things. So we're trying to be proactive, and that's why we had a review meeting with them in March to discuss the schematic design. We had another review meeting after we did the preliminary submittal in May. We had a meeting with them on May 21st, and then we're going to have another one. These are all items that have already taken place. Go to the next slide. And then these are future schedule items that are going to be happening here very soon. We're going to be submitting the final design this week. Then we have a review meeting set up with them next week. Again, just to keep everybody involved, make sure we're asking all their questions, trying to get everything answered up front. And we're also having some issues. I don't know if you want me to go into the whole spec, the FAA spec requirements.
Give a brief overview, yeah.
Basically, MDOT has their own specs that had been approved by the FAA for years. Some of them go back to the 70s, the 80s. They're not always kept up to date, which is not necessarily a good thing, but they had been approved by the FAA at one point in time, and we've been using them on projects for a long time. And the FAA is finally saying, look, you can't use these out-of-date specs. You have to use FAA specs if you're doing an FAA project. So along with this specs and plan review, they're trying to make sure that we are using their specs, and if there are any changes at all, we have to submit these modification of standards forms. And it's kind of a new process. We're really the guinea pig. So hopefully with all these meetings and trying to be proactive, it won't be an issue. But we just have to stay on top of it and make sure that we're keeping them happy. So.
Change in the specs from federal to state.
There's not a ton of changes. A lot of it is small stuff, but it's on both the general spec side as far as the front end, where you talked about all the contracting requirements and how the bids are taken, things like that, where MDOT does everything electronically through their bid process. The FAA is not set up that way, so actually the state is a little bit ahead of them in that case. So this project won't be bid through MDOT's electronic system. It's going to be done the old-fashioned way, and that's because that's what the FAA has in their specs. And then when it comes to the technical specs, probably one of the biggest differences is their asphalt spec. We're trying to go through that and see what the differences are, and is it going to is it going to sway the prices? Because our asphalt contractors here are used to seeing that MDOT spec. They understand it. They know the testing. They realize what's required. The FAA spec's a little bit different. So we're trying to look at other projects and see if there's going to be a change in price. One example was the project in Flint. They just did that. It was another early on project where they used FAA specs, and their prices came in 20% high. So we went back and looked at it, and asphalt wasn't one of the issues. So whether that's going to be a problem or not, we're not sure of yet. But it's, to answer your question, it's basically minor changes, and the FAA specs are more set up to do national work. It's not specific to Michigan. So a lot of the changes we make in their specs are just to meet our Michigan requirements and the materials we have available and things like that. So does that answer your question?
No. You're the engineer. Is it a better spec or
And
Carl,
I kind of go both ways on this because on one hand I believe that where states more localized, they should know their area better. They should know the pavements and things like that. But on the same token, their specs have given us what we have today. So I do kind of go both ways on that issue. I think the FAA ones are adequate, but
it's a hard question. I think they're adequate too. And actually, CNS has developed our own additions to the FAA specs, and that's what we're trying to work through, because they consider that a modification of standards. They consider it a modification of their specs, but we think it's an enhancement, and we think it makes it better. So we're going to be submitting the FAA specs with our enhancements and requesting a modification of standard. So we think you're going to get the best of both worlds.
That's what we're looking for.
Where you'll get the local materials and the additions that we've made based on 40 years of experience with the standards that they've set up.
And we argue that too. I mean, even if, like, for example, the township wanted to insert its own legal opinion, legal jargon into the contract, that's considered a modification to standards. So we're having that argument with them on why do I have to follow the FAA rules if I have mandated township policies that need to be entered into those contracts. So it'll probably piggyback onto that.
With the concrete, right.
Kelly, what's the MDOT's reaction been to the FAA spec that's different than theirs?
Oh, it's been tough. They are having a hard time. They've had a lot of conversations with them, and they've been going back and forth, and they really don't want to switch. They want to keep using their specs, and I think they want to update theirs and get them approved again so that they can continue to use those. But it's been kind of a fight between the state and the feds as to what's the right way to do it and what's considered a modification. If we just put some wording in there so that the contractor understands better what we want, is that really a modification? I don't think it really is. It's not changing the intent of the spec. It's trying to make it better. So a lot of that we won't know until we submit. We have all the forms that we have to submit with each spec, and we'll find out if they will accept them or not.
What do we have to do to satisfy the end of fiscal year requirement?
We just have to have the project bid by the September 30th.
September 30th. We have to accept a bid or issue a request for a bid?
We just have to take bids, and they have to get the sponsor, the grant agreement going as well, and have that signed. So we're taking bids in July is the plan. So we would have 2 months to get that grant agreement signed and everything ready to go. So it seems like we should be okay. Unless is there some process within the township?
Once we get the bids in, that'll be a kind of a last push with the township board and getting everything finalized.
And if there's anything we need to do as far as special meeting, or maybe we need to look at the timeline and figure out if there's anything we need to do special. But it seems like with 2 months, we should be okay there.
Mike,
Debate between the FAA and MDOT. Are we the guinea pig, or is there somebody that's preceded us in the state, some other airport?
Well, there's a couple projects that actually got pulled. I think we're the first ones kind of going through the process the way they want us to. There was a couple of projects where they were told, go ahead and use the MDOT specs. You're good to go. And then the FAA did the review, and they said, no, you have to. They had already went out. They were already advertised, already ready to take bids, and they had to come back and actually do a redesign and substitute the MDOT specs and put in the FAA specs.
So we're the guinea pig.
And it's
Pretty
still kind of
much,
a
yeah.
modified guinea pig because we're doing it a little differently in that we're being very cautious about this. Normally, you might have 1 or 2 meetings with the FAA. We've set up multiple meetings, several steps down the road to make sure we don't miss any steps. We're meeting all their requirements. Again, that review process and the specs changes are 5-6 months old. I remember that from our last conference we were at is when the changes took place. So the FAA is still ramping up to start doing this checklist and these systems, and I don't think they're as prepared as they need to be either. So that's why
We're filling out the
That
checklist.
was brought up in that May meeting that we attended. What was it?
you're saying the last meeting with the FAA?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, so it's been interesting, but hopefully it'll go well. I have high hopes.
Mike, just a question on this timing. What do we, as a township, need to do? What is, we're here with our Commerce Park Commission, and we had the advisory committee look at it, but I'm sure this has to go to the township board, right?
Absolutely.
So what?
So the approval tonight was to go out for bids. Once that approval is, we'll follow the schedule here. We'll bid the documents and everything with that. Once it comes back in, I would think we'll have to do a joint meeting with the committee and commission on that timeline to make sure we're going to get inside that 2 months. And my thought would be if we want to move forward with the project, then we present something to the township board in that time frame.
Is that too late? Well, my thought is what's the township board gonna want? Just to hear this or provide any input, or is there gonna be issues brought up from their point of view that?
I'm sure the financial aspects of it are the ones that'll have to be heavily debated.
Usually when you get a grant, how does that work? How do you get that signed?
It has to be approved by the township board, and then we get a certified resolution authorizing me to sign the grant.
Okay. So do you have a meeting in August where you would bring that grant to them?
Yeah, Ted, I believe there's 2 meetings in August for the township board, so we could do it at one of those 2.
Okay.
And
So
I'm
we-
assuming at that time the local match is also approved?
Yep,
I'm assuming
it would be.
unless
It'd
you
be
have
one.
the
It'd
match,
be one
you don't
package.
get the grant.
Yes,
So,
yes.
okay.
We wouldn't sign for the grant without the approval of the local match.
We can be proactive with that too, and if we should get on MDOT and let them know when your meeting is and make sure,
Absolutely.
because last time they were slow getting you the information. So if they know when your meeting date is, we can tell them you need it a week ahead of time or
Yep.
whatever, and we can try to keep things moving
It's
that
just
way.
that September 1st, we need to have a contractor in place, and we need to have our grant signed and approved.
September 30th, end of
September
September.
30th.
Yep, September 30th. That's
I
the end
don't
of the
want
fiscal year.
us, the township in general, to hold up anything. That's my only point.
Yep.
And I'm not sure what the township board's gonna want or not want, or, we've done all our due diligence and we're making a recommendation, and I'm sure the township board would just look at it and say, you know what, move forward, but I just don't want this project to potentially get stalled anywhere at the very end because the township board is involved.
Is there any
I
reason?
thought there'd be multiple steps. I mean, even before we go out for the bids, we can do a study session with the township board and a presentation in public, and then go for another study session if we need to with the township board, and then for final approval, answer any questions. We can do it in phases like that, and that can start. That could start immediately, based on the specs we've got now. We can start using the estimates and things like that, and then when the final bids come back in, that's when we go for and it'd be in August, the final discussion on what we want to do with the project.
Yeah, we'll have the final bid documents in July, beginning of July. So if we needed to meet with them sometime in July ahead of time, we could do that. or if you want to find out specifically what they might want, we can get that prepared for them too.
Yep.
I agree with that. I
Yep.
think they need to know at that point.
Okay. As much as we can.
Even if that's a 5% kick.
Yeah. We'll have to talk to MDOT about that too and see if there's that's something we can include.
Or a grant,
Or,
yeah. That may be something that the state can include in a grant as their own discretionary, but not the FAA. That's something we'll look at.
Whatever.
Yep.
Well, that theoretically, you know, we don't need to debate our road situation, okay? But we could put in all kinds of different contingencies in the contract that, you know, if you break this over on the bridge, or if you do this on Meridian, or you do that, and certainly all these things are capable of being put into bid documents and bid on. But the airport, this group is responsible for the 5%. And I'm not so sure that, you know, I want our bids to go up on this project because, you know, the contractors have, you know, were required to raise their pricing because of certain things that may or may not happen. So
And they would go up if we're putting things in there about.
now, if the
replacing
township board
roads.
wants to ante up and certainly go half with the airport, you know, 2.5 us, 2.5 them, and, you know, we could do that, but from the standpoint of the Commerce Park Commission and the airport, and we fund all this stuff, I don't want all these contingencies put into this bid that we ultimately have to increase our amount to cover. That makes sense?
It sounds like that's something that either needs to be discussed further, or we need to figure out exactly how do we want to handle that. Do we have to bring the township into it and have a discussion with them, or?
And this is why I think that we need to, like Ted said, July 1st, start having these, because I don't want end of August, September 1st,
Questions?
all of a sudden the board
Yeah.
saying, well, you know what, this isn't in there, and we have no time. And, you know, now the township delayed the project. And if we delay the project, then what happens, Kelly?
We could lose the funding. Possible.
Just speaking from a board perspective and what I can see coming back at us from the board, if we don't have some contingencies in there for the damage done, we're going to get some kickback from the board, and I don't want to see that happen. That's the only
Well,
reason
then
I'm
the
stressing.
board, Ted, is going to have to say, you know what, they don't want to do the project.
Well, it could be. That could be.
Think they would go there?
You know what,
Anything's possible.
Let's not speculate. What's going to
I
happen?
got to speculate, but, you know, if these things are going to be an issue, then they need to be addressed here and now.
There's a board meeting you want me to come to, let me know when that would be, and we can set up something similar to this, do another presentation and talk through some of the issues. Did everybody get a chance to see all these dates? Yeah, final bid docs July 1st, advertisement July 6th, bid opening on the 31st. Start date right now, we have it in March of 2016. Just because we figured by the time we get all the contracts in place, contractor ready to go, it's going to be fall. We don't really want to tear up the runway and then have a runway that you can't use for the whole winter. So our thought was that we would wait until March. You're supposed to have a drawdown on your grant within 6 months of when you get it. So if they start in March, they could start demoing. We figured that you'd still be in that time frame and you'd be okay. And there is some wording in there to say if the contractor wants to propose some work for 2015, they could do that, and we'll review it. But we don't want the runway shut down for the winter, so it's got to be something outside the pavement section that would be able to do. That's all I had. So,
Any
additional
other comments or
questions?
questions for Kelly?
The only other couple additions I had, going over the pricing. I mean, right now, we've been trying to sell this as a $4 to $6 million project. We're a little bit over 4 right now, or I'm sorry, 6 right now. That the electrical, that home run for the electrical was a fairly large addition. The reason for that is because our electrical vault here on the airport is actually just behind you guys where you're sitting, and it's about as far away as that could possibly be from that runway. So to do a conduit and home run, I believe that was about a $400,000 add-on. And the previous drawings, if I recall, didn't show what it was, whether it was in conduit or if it was a direct bury, and it did end up being a direct bury. And the spec is for a home run and conduit. So that's one of the reasons for the large cost add-on on that. But the other thing to note in the pricing right now is that we have a $550,000 contingency in there too, which, Kelly, I know you and I talked about, starts to come down a little bit as we complete the design.
Yeah, usually as we get into final design, we lower that and get it closer. And then MDOT will typically put a contingency in their portion of the grant. The FAA won't allow us to do that, but we'll leave some of it in there just for things that have come up during construction. You'll get things that get added on or changes that are made. So they usually put a small amount of that back in the contract. But that will come down. Some of that will come out.
So with that reduction, I think we're still really close to being in that $4 to $6 million range.
We think it's good. It's tough. I will.
It's gone over.
We have a really good track record. I will say that this year is tough because contractors are busy, and we've, a couple years ago, contractors were just looking for work. They wanted whatever they could get, and their prices were low. And it's kind of going the other way now, where they're busy, they don't have enough people. They can't get jobs done, and their prices are going through the roof because of it. So we're kind of stuck in this weird spot right now. So I think some of the numbers are conservative. Like we have $90, I believe, for asphalt. And, of course, it's not going to be built until 2016, so we have to keep that in mind. But we've had a couple bids recently where they've come in at about $71 to $75, where we have 90 in there right now. And that's $1 million out of your project. So I think it's a little on the conservative side right now, but with this market, it's tough to say, is it going to keep going up?
And I'm comfortable, too. I think it's conservative. I mean, obviously, that Flint project gave us a little bit of a scare coming in at over 20%. Luckily, there will be a few more projects bid before us, correct? With
Should have a couple more examples.
The specs and something else we can gauge off. I think Bad Axe is doing a runway.
Yep. We have their bids now.
Okay.
So,
Flint proceeded with the project. They were doing an asphalt runway. It came in 20% over design estimates, and they proceeded with the project.
Okay, I've got a tactical question because I think it's something we Commerce Park Commission and the Airport Advisory Committee have both manager have got to keep in the back of their head. For the last 2 years, we've had down situations for 422 and 1735. Now, God intervened, and we were able to shift traffic over to 1735 when 422 was down. In the first, when 1735 was down, we could shift them to 422. For you, John. The issue is of concern because effectively, if we've got a problem with 1735, the airport's closed.
Mm-hmm. We did talk to MDOT about that
Yep.
at the last meeting, and they did agree to, if there are emergency repairs that need to take place, that they would still participate in those.
At a 90-10 share.
Yep.
And,
The 90-10 share.
honestly, with those issues, I think that's about as best we could do with that is we're going to have a major asphalt contractor on site doing a runway. So if 1735 were to have a heave, I would hope that we could go over there, patch it, do a separate contract at a 90-10, and do a quick repair in asphalt, which all of our repairs that we've been doing on the heaves are in asphalt.
We're
So
gonna be shut down during Island Fest next year. there an opportunity there to do
Yep.
something to keep in the back of my mind anyway, because that's the reality of what we've seen over the last.
Any other comments or questions for Kelly? Hearing none, thank you, Kelly. As Mr. Rathel indicated, we appreciate your hard work and making this happen, especially in a tight time frame. And our bids will come back at least within your budget or under budget.
I sure hope so. It's
Got
been
$5
fun.
million, go spend it.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly.
Yep.
Moving on to next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of April 20th, 2015.
Move approval.
Motion by Mr. Rathel, supported by Mr. Fulbaum to approve the minutes as submitted. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Motion carries. Item number 6 is the financial report for May 2015, and included in your package is the summary for May. In our report indicates that our revenue budgeted for for the current fiscal year is $831,160. Our year-to-date revenue is $131.52, which comes up to just under 16% of our budget. Our expenditures are budgeted at $831,160, and our year-to-date encumbrances and expenditures are $177,484, which is 21.5% of our budget. Our capital reserves as of the end of May are $478,317. Jet A fuel is at $14,421, and the 100 low lead is $35,356. Past due summary as of June 5th is $2,658, which I think is the lowest we've seen in quite a while. And our pending legal action amount is $8,629. So with that, Mike, is there anything you wanted to add?
That was pretty much my one comment was on the past due rent summary. We have been consistently trying to work that down. You can see we have a few offenders still left to deal with, but that is the lowest number I believe I've had since I've been here. The PAPKey was on a payment plan. Russman is on a current payment plan. Once a month, he's supposed to pay He's supposed to pay $300 a month until he's caught up. The Stanley and Associates, that one is not normally past due. He is getting caught up right now, and I hope to see him current by next month. The only other note on there is your east side of Hangar 1 expenses have been updated there on the right-hand side. These have not all been expensed. There are some that were like 50% of the way through the project, but just wanted to give you guys an updated view of how it's tracking along as we wind down the project.
Mike, can you talk about the schedule for that, when that's going to be complete?
I'm hoping to have the tenant begin paying. The lease is signed. I'm hoping to have the tenant begin paying the first of next month. We are doing a final cleaning in the building right now, kind of a pre-move-in cleaning. We have a lot of debris and just dust left behind from all the construction that we've been doing in the building. So we have our contractor in doing that. The drywall and paint is done. The plumber was in today installing the toilet and the sink in the unit as well. So the HVAC system is completed. There's a couple small little masonry items left, and then we cleaned in the building. There's 2 utility pits. If you recall in there, they're older. We've cleaned them out. We've cut the pipes out of them. They're basically an empty utility pit now. The only reason we're waiting to drywall those in is we've rewired the sump pumps in outside, and when we're cleaning the building, they're power washing the inside, so we're going to push all the water into those pits. So I didn't want them drywalled before we were done pushing the water into it, and all the dirty water that we're going to be pumping out. So that drywall and the cleaning is kind of the last, and then the last finishing touches will go on, and I hope to have the tenant in there again in the first of next month.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Rathel.
Mike, I'm looking at this pending legal action and settlement plan, and Dan Scroziel. Dan Scroziel is in business, right?
Correct.
they're on Macomb Street or
Correct, Macomb Street.
But they have a $5,155, $56 balance with us. What's going on there? Can you explain that?
It's in collections currently, and that's been flat. It's been a few months since we've seen any activity on that. And when we do see activity, it's a very minimal payment of a few $100s. We've tried to go through some of the legal stuff. I did try a new tactic on this one with a collection agency. We have been having maybe a little better success, I would say, than legal, but not much.
So they were a tenant of ours.
Correct, in Hangar 2.
And how did they get such a high debt? What happened there? What's going on there?
Stopped paying rent, and then right near the end of their lease, and then vacated the premise.
So they vacated the premises owing us $5,100.
Correct.
And they refused to pay that.
Correct.
Mike, do you know how many months that is rent that was due that they just walked away from?
Might be able to tell you. Hang on one second here. Yeah, it looks, it's about 3 or 4 months plus late fees. Late fees are only $60.
And when we contact them to make a settlement, they just refuse to pay us, or was it just...
Correct. Or they'll promise and then they won't pay.
Do you have any idea how often the collection agency contacts them?
At the beginning, it was very regular, probably 3 times a week. Now I think it's probably once a week, but most of it's ignored phone calls. We do have the address, personal cell phone. He has all that information. So,
as a business that's still in existence, they leave here, they go somewhere else. Have they indicated why they're not paying us? Did they say that we didn't provide service?
No.
So we did provide service.
Correct.
They just left and didn't pay.
Correct.
Well, that's a shame. I mean, that's absolutely a shame that
Please continue.
that they're not even willing to come up with some kind of a settlement plan. $5,100 is a lot of money, and
the fact that they're still in business on the island, and they just felt it was okay to just walk away from a debt from space that they rented from us. They earned revenue, and then they chose not to pay, their obligation.
I agree.
have we looked at the legal possibility of assessing their taxes? Is that a possibility to do something like that? I mean, they owe the township. I mean, we're the township.
Mr. Treasurer, refresh my memory, they did have a past due on their personal property, but from what I recall, it doesn't transfer to the new business. Remember you and I had a discussion about it.
The new business wouldn't have a personal property. And the only time we could have forced would if we did it while they were still here.
They reincorporated?
No.
No.
Same entity, different location.
What about their water bill?
I haven't looked at it.
Well, they're leasing their new facility, so I don't know if they pay the water bill at that location or not.
I can find that out. I don't know.
Do we have any idea whether they're paying the landlord at their new location?
I have not heard of anything past due, but I don't have regular contact with the landlord over there.
Well, it's a shame.
Any other comments or questions, Mike, on the, or any other comments on the financials?
The only other one to note is the reason the expenditures at the beginning of the year are always high this time of year is we make our bond payment and pay all of our insurances off right at the beginning of the year. So the expenditures show a little elevated, but we'll get caught back up in the coming months.
Those will even out.
Yes.
Any other comments or questions for Mike? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the May financial report.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Rathel,
Second.
supported by Mr. Stoll to approve the May 2015 financial report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Motion carries. Item number 7 is the manager's report, the Moore Landscaping lease update.
Make sure this comes on for everybody. Can everybody see that? The our satellite overhead here that I've got pulled up. If the commission recalls, in our last meeting, we approved a lease for Carl Moore Landscaping to utilize the north half of this lot. It was going to be a shared lot with our building number 70. This tenant that occupies the space right here uses these two entrances, and there's an overhead door that was installed there. We approved that lease through further discussions with Mr. Moore. The only thing that's come up that was not previously discussed and I wanted to bring to the commission to get an opinion on is he requested to have a storage container on the lot to store some materials and equipment inside of. And I'm just wondering if that's something we want on one of our main entrances into the Commerce Park on our midway there. I believe we were talking about it would be in this corner. It would be a clean, it wouldn't be a rusty unit or anything like that. It would be a painted, well-maintained storage container, but would still be in one of our main roads in the Commerce Park. I just wanted to bring that up and talk about it because that was really the only change to the lease.
Does it have to be in that corner, Mike?
No,
Can it be in the other one?
that could be negotiated.
Well, he has a building to put stuff in.
No, it's
He
just
doesn't
a
have
lot.
building?
It's,
We're just looking to rent this portion of the parking lot.
The north half here.
I'd prefer it to be in the northeast corner.
Okay,
If, and I'm assuming you're going to review the look of this
correct.
storage unit.
I would probably put some language in the lease that has to be a well-maintained, clean unit.
and what does that mean? I wasn't really in favor too much of even having outdoor storage in this area off of Midway. We spent a lot of years cleaning both sides of this avenue up. However, Carl had demonstrated that he keeps his equipment clean, that it would be well maintained, it would be vehicles only, and he would park things in an organized manner. Now you're talking about storage, outdoor storage. That's not something that I'm in favor of. It's not what the design use of that facility is for. Outdoor storage was different than any other conversation that we've had over the last year and a half or so that we've been talking to him about this.
Correct, that was never brought up.
And you put one outdoor storage facility unit in there, it's probably going to be one of those shipping containers
Yeah.
or something.
Correct, to be a
And now you-
standard size shipping
And now
container.
you have a shipping container stuck out there in the open. And then what happens? And another shipping container. And then when we're not here, and someone else comes in, well, there's always been a shipping container there, and now all of a sudden, the area that has cleaned up and has been very well representative of what we want at this air facility and Commerce Park is now blighted. This is how it starts. I'm not in favor of it. So if there's a
Okay.
vote, you know where my vote is.
Thank you.
We have other areas in the airport that he could have outdoor storage in.
Mike, what does the lease say?
The lease that we approved was for outdoor storage of equipment, things like that, a couple of clean stone piles, mulch. That was it. In our previous conversations, the storage container never came up, not until the lease was approved, and then the discussion went into that.
Add-ons.
Add-ons, correct. That's where I said we need to wait, bring it back to the commission for discussion to see if that's something we want on one of our main avenues.
Do you have any sense for whether he purposely waited until after the lease was approved to spring this on you, or was it just something that came up after?
I can't really tell whether it's an afterthought that was, I probably want to store some things inside in a covered area. I don't know, or if it was sprung on us.
Not just something that one day you decide you want to do.
What's the feeling of the rest of the board?
I'm against it.
I agree with John. Hold on, same thing. Mr. Van Oz.
Is that the only facility or the area he rents from us?
That would be the only one he would rent from us. He does not currently rent anything from us. We had discussed maybe something, this is our Commerce Park here, like off in this corner, if you were to fence in an area and have it more out of sight. the issue then comes into installing a fence gets to be a large expense with that, where we can't really recoup our costs and he isn't willing to cover it. So I guess if the conversation wanted to go that way, that's something we could bring forward in the future. But my feel of that was that he was unwilling to participate in the fence installation to make a new yard.
Well, if it hadn't been part of his lease up until now, I would have no problem denying that request.
I guess the message to send to him then, Mike, is that we are not in favor of
Okay.
that.
Will do.
We'll move on to item number 8, which is our action items. And 8A is the authorization to solicit bids for runway 422 rehabilitation. We have a resolution in front of us that reads, based upon the recommendation of the airport manager, the airport commission hereby authorizes the commission to solicit bids for the runway 422 reconstruction.
Well, first of all, there is no airport commission, so that's,
Should read the airport commerce park.
Commission.
Yep. We'll make that change.
Were you going to bring this in front of the board?
From my discussions with township manager, he felt we could proceed with the bids. The township board has already approved the design aspect of this project and approved the funding of it, so they are aware the project is coming. He didn't feel the need to bring it back to the board
Right.
for
I don't have
approval.
a problem with that.
Okay.
so wait a minute, the township board has already approved the funding in the project?
Just of the design aspect, which we recommended to them, not of the reconstruction project. The project kind of came in 2 phases, right? We paid CNS to do the 60%, 90% design to get the project going. We approved, the township board has approved that contract. That's already done. He felt because the township board has already approved the design contract, they clearly know that the project is coming and we can move forward with going out for bids without taking it back to the board.
All we're doing is bidding it. We're not
Correct.
awarding anything.
We're not awarding or anything. All we're going to do
Bids
is
come
go
back
out
too
for
high,
bids.
it's not going to go anywhere.
Correct.
So at this point, the township board's already approved the project, not just, they just haven't approved the contract bid.
No, they've approved the design and engineering of the project. They have not approved any of the construction or anything, but they're aware that obviously a construction contract is coming up forward.
But do they need to approve the construction design?
Yes, the
Why
design's
would they
already been
need to
approved.
approve the construction design?
No, they don't.
No.
So what do they need to approve?
The contract itself.
The contract itself for the total reconstruction.
Award the bid.
Right.
Yep.
I'll entertain a motion on the resolution. Motion by Mr. Manns, supported by Mr. Folbaum. And Mike, this is going to change that based on the recommendation of the airport manager, the Airport Commerce Park Commission hereby authorizes, and is it the township that's soliciting these, or is it you?
It'll be, you can just say authorizes myself to solicit
Authorizes
the
the airport manager
Yep.
to solicit bids for runway 422 reconstruction. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Motion carries. Item number 9 is subcommittee reports. We have none tonight. Item number 10 is discussion items. The airport hosting future weddings.
I just wanted to have a brief discussion on this. We're going to host our first wedding this year, which we're excited about. But we've had some future interest from other parties, some on the island here, local residents. I think there is a movement happening for weddings to use unique locations and areas. I just wanted to bring it forward to the commission and see if that's something we want to continue to entertain. Because some of these, like one I'm dealing with right now, is about 2 years out. So do we want to, a wedding's kind of something once we commit to that we need to definitely hold up on our end of the deal. It's not really something we can get out of. So if there's a future development or something that were to come forward ever in hangar number 1, the facility would probably need to accommodate that wedding. So I just wanted to have the discussion with the commission on if it's something we're going to continue to entertain and we want to book, an event like that. Normally there's a setup day, a breakdown day, and a cleanup day. The cleanups are probably half days, something like that. We'd probably bring in $3,000 to $4,000 on, and most of them would be on the weekends. I would say regardless of what we choose, we would still limit them just because it does affect, depending on how much area they want, it can affect the aircraft that are in the hangar and the tenants that are paying us rent.
Mike, is this just the wedding or is it the reception as well?
Most of them are just the reception itself. Some are the wedding and the reception interest, so it'd be an all-day thing. I know I think we've had some people get married in the garden in the past before, but that was mostly dealt with the township. Well, I don't believe, since I've been here, I've never hosted an actual wedding in the hangar, but it does seem like there's been some recent interest in that, again, with people trying to find some unique locations.
So this would include food and alcohol?
Correct.
In
They'd have catering and all that set up. I mean, my thought on the airport's involvement is pretty much we're going to open the door and make sure the electrical's turned on and the rest is up to the client.
And I'm assuming the liability issue with alcohol is addressed by township legal counsel and...
Correct. Most clients will pick up a rider on their homeowner's insurance is a normal way to do it to make sure that they're protected and they meet our requirements. But there's a liability policy that we have to have with the airport, and the township listed as additionally insured. That would fall under that.
And at the end of the evening, who closes, who sort of makes sure they get out at a certain time, and who closes things up?
It'd probably have to be myself or an airport employee. So again, that's obviously something I would want to limit. I wouldn't want to be down every Friday and Saturday night checking in on the weddings, making sure everything's going smooth. That may be something, if we could generate enough revenue off of, you could have somebody trained to do the events and come down and check for a small fee.
Mike, do you want to do this?
I'm not opposed to doing, a couple weddings a year and coming down and making sure on a Sunday everything's cleaned up properly after the wedding. The only thing that I'm concerned about, again, is the future development. If we have, say, somebody comes to us with a collection of aircraft and they want to use the entire hangar for 2 years or something, and we've got a wedding booked 2 years out, we have to turn down
That'd be a great problem, Mike.
Well, it would be a great problem to have. I'm not saying it's very likely, but if something were to arise and we've got a wedding 2 years out, we're restricting ourselves greatly.
Could have a cancel 6 months before the wedding issue in there.
Yeah.
If you get that close, 6 months, they should be able to find another place.
Don't think that's a good idea.
Dude, you don't want any
Well,
angry brides.
Well, we can do what-if scenarios forever. What if the Yankee Air Force decides that they want to house all their planes here, but we just did a runway project that's not capable of landing their aircraft. So, we cannot make decisions today that financially benefit NAS Groziel Memorial for a possibility of one day of knight in shining armor coming up 2 years from now.
Does anyone have any objections to hosting weddings?
I think maybe the only other stipulation you could put in there is we only reserve and confirm 1 year out or something to limit the time frame, something like that. But that's something I can administratively do in house.
Well, Mike, why don't you come up with some kind of guidelines that you can present to us that you'd like us to follow as it relates to, policies and procedures for leasing the facility for a wedding. So we at least have some kind of guideline to follow. And if you want to put a restriction, it can't be more than 1 year out, present that to us for us to review.
Okay.
And Mike, another good thing as well, there's a better possibility that, people are calling more once they realize it. Oh, we can have a reception in a World War II hangar.
Yep.
That all of a sudden everyone wants a wedding, and you got 4 of them booked in the month of August. Well, that we can't do that, I don't think.
Yeah. So
maybe there's 4 dates or 6 dates that you set aside in the summertime that's open for a reception.
Okay.
And those are the only dates, or you limit it to 4 or 6 a year, and that's it.
Or you put some restriction that there can't be more than one a month or
Right.
one every other month
Yep.
or something like that.
I agree. And I believe, yeah, limiting the number of those and then between those and the photo shoots that we do throughout the summer can create a very nice side revenue stream for us.
For the Memorial Foundation, right?
Some of the funds.
Help clean up some of our landscape around here.
Oh, geez. Why did you have to say that, Ron?
Anything else, Mike?
Nope.
Okay.
Got that out of my system.
We will move to item number 11, which is the chairman's report. I have nothing new to report tonight. Item number 12 is public comment. No one here for public comment, so we will move on to item number 13, which is motion to move to executive session to discuss vehicle development offer. I'll entertain a motion to move to executive session. Motion by Mr. Folbaum. Support by Mr. Mans. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Motion carries.